They said you were an animal. That's the word they used in court, not a man, an animal. And the moment those handcuffs clicked around your wrists for the first time, you made a decision. If that's what they think I am, I'm going to make sure every single person in this prison believes it too. This is the story of how you became the most feared prisoner in the entire federal system. Not the biggest, not the most connected, just the one that made guards lower their voices when they walked past your cell. And by the time this is over, you're going to understand exactly how that happened. The bus smells like sweat and rust and something you can't name. 32 men packed into metal seats, wrists chained to a bar that runs the length of the vehicle. Nobody talks. Not really. Just short words, sideways looks, the kind of communication that happens between men who already understand the rules. You don't know the rules yet. You're 23 years old. You've been sentenced to 14 years, and you are absolutely terrified. But no one on this bus can know that. You keep your jaw tight, eyes forward. The man sitting next to you has a tattoo on his neck that runs all the way into his jawline, a scorpion, detailed and perfect, like someone spent days on it. He hasn't looked at you once. That somehow feels worse than if he had. The bus slows. Through the scratched window, you see the walls for the first time. 40 feet of gray concrete topped with razor wire, with guard towers on each corner, lights that never turn off. A gate that takes 3 separate clearances to open. Whitmore Federal Correctional Institution. One of the men in the back laughs, low and without humor. "Welcome to the rest of your life," he says. Nobody answers him. The gate opens. They give you a number, not a nickname. Not even your last name, really. A number. Inmate 7741. They take your clothes, your shoes, the watch your mother gave you. They hand you a uniform the color of dirty concrete and a pair of boots so stiff they could stand on their own. The intake officer doesn't look at your face once. You move through the process like cattle: fingerprints, photographs, medical screening, psychological evaluation. A man behind a desk asks you a series of questions in a completely flat voice. Do you have suicidal thoughts? No. Have you ever been hospitalized for mental illness? No. Do you have any known enemies within this facility? No. He stamps the paper without looking up. You're going to D block, he says. Good luck. He says good luck the way people say it when they mean the opposite. D block. You'll learn later that D block has a reputation. Not officially. Nothing is official in a place like this. But everyone knows. D block is where they put the ones they don't know what to do with. The ones who are too violent for general population, or too vulnerable, or just too strange in some way that doesn't fit neatly into any other category. Walking through that corridor for the first time, you understand why. The noise hits you before anything else. Metal on metal. Voices layered over voices. Somewhere above you, a man is screaming the words to a song, loudly, joyfully, completely unaware or unconcerned that it's 4 in the afternoon and 60 men can hear him. Doors line the walls on both sides, some open, some closed. And every single open door has someone standing in it, watching you. You count the steps in your head, 12, 13, 14, because if you stop counting, you're going to stop breathing, and if you stop breathing, your face is going to show them exactly what you feel. A hand lands on your shoulder. You stop. New fish, says a voice behind you. You turn. He's not particularly large, maybe 6 feet, medium build, with a shaved head and eyes that seem to measure everything they see with some kind of invisible scale. He's smiling. That's somehow the most alarming part. Marcus Webb, he says, like it should mean something. It doesn't mean anything to you yet. I'm just getting to my cell, you say. I know, Marcus says. I'm walking you there. He talks the whole way, not nervously, smoothly, like a tour guide who's given this particular tour 100 times. First rule, Marcus says, don't borrow anything. Not food, not money, not time. Nothing comes for free in here. Second rule, don't tell anyone your charges. Not the first week anyway. Let them wonder. Third rule. Why are you telling me this? You ask. He stops walking, looks at you. Because you remind me of myself, he says. 8 years ago, walking through that same door, and nobody told me anything. He pauses. I'm going to tell you something else. This place has a king. Every place has a king. Not like this one. He lowers his voice slightly. His name is Raymond Voss. He runs D Block. Guards, inmates, the kitchen, the laundry, all of it. He decides who eats well and who doesn't, who gets protected and who gets... He trails off. Gets what? Marcus just looks at you. He already knows you're here, he says. He'll want to meet you. When that happens, whatever you do... He stops. Your cell is on the right. He nods toward it. Whatever you do, he says again quietly. Don't let him see you blink. You meet Raymond Voss on your third day. He summons you through a system so efficient it could only exist in a place where someone has had years to build it. A man you've never spoken to slides next to you at breakfast and says very quietly, Table 7. After count. Table 7 is Raymond Voss's table. You think about not going. You go. He's older than you expected. Mid-50s, gray at his temples, with the kind of physical stillness that makes you realize most people move too much. He's eating. He doesn't look up when you approach. Sit, he says. He finishes eating before he speaks again, unhurried, completely in control of every second. 7741, he says. 14 years. Aggravated assault, trafficking, crossing state lines, and which made it federal. Federal prosecutors wanted 20. He looks up. You had a good lawyer. Public defender, you say. Something flickers in his face. Not quite a smile. What do you want? He says finally. You look at him. Nothing, you say. The table goes quiet. The two men flanking Voss shift their weight. Voss studies you for a long moment. That, he says, is either the most honest thing anyone's ever said to me in this room, or the stupidest. He picks up his fork again. Come back tomorrow, he says. Same time. You do. And the day after that, and the day after that. Raymond Voss doesn't want loyalty. He tests for steadiness, the kind that doesn't crack under pressure or improvise badly when surprised. One morning he asks you to deliver a sealed envelope to a man in B Block. Doesn't tell you what's inside. Doesn't tell you what to say if you're stopped. You get stopped. A young guard named Pruitt intercepts you between blocks. Asks where you're going. You tell him laundry detail. He asks what's in your hand. You say it's mail. Another inmate asked you to pass it along. You hold eye contact the entire time. You don't fidget. You don't blink. He lets you through. Voss was watching from the second floor railing. The next morning, for the first time, he calls you by name instead of your number. That's how it works with Voss. He never says well done. He just stops treating you like inventory. Marcus finds you that evening. He's being investigated, Marcus says quietly. Federal oversight. They think he's running money outside. They're looking for someone to flip. He pauses. Don't be that person. How do you know this? You ask. Marcus is quiet for a moment. Because they already tried to flip me, he says. Then he walks away. You stand there, and you turn that over carefully. Why is Marcus Webb still here? Why is he still comfortable? You file it. You don't act on it. But you don't forget it, either. The investigation becomes real 6 weeks later. You're in the laundry when the block goes into lockdown. No announcement. Just the clang of every cell door closing simultaneously, and guards moving with urgency that doesn't belong to a routine shakedown. They take Voss. 4 federal officers and the warden himself walking him out in restraints while 60 men watch through their doors. The block goes completely silent. You stand in the laundry room still holding folded shirts and you understand something immediately. The vacuum Voss is leaving is going to be filled, and you are standing in exactly the right position to be that someone, or exactly the wrong one. 3 men come to your cell in 48 hours. Carlos Reyes, sharp, networked, running 3 blocks, makes it clear without saying it directly that the wrong side of him would be complicated. A guard named Holloway closes your cell door before he speaks. Tells you the investigators know about the envelope. Delivery, about table 7. Says there's a way to protect yourself. Gives you the name of an agent. Marcus just sits on your bunk and looks at the floor. I was Voss's person once, he says finally. Different facility. I trusted the wrong man at exactly the wrong time. He looks up. Devereux, the man who gave me up, told the feds everything I knew. They used it to build new charges against me and the men I'd worked with. I lost 8 years, and 2 of those men lost their freedom entirely. He stops. I've been in this system for 16 years, 2 left. I'm not going to let you make what I made. Carlos? You ask. Predictable. He wants quiet and profit. Don't threaten that and he won't move. Holloway? He's the one who built the case on Voss, Marcus says. He's not offering protection. He's offering a leash. You look at him. And Devereux, you say. Where is he now? Something shifts in Marcus's face, just slightly. C block, he says. Works for Carlos. The room gets very quiet. On the morning of the 3rd day, you wake up to find something slipped under your cell door. A photograph. Your mother. Standing outside the house you grew up in. She's wearing the coat she bought last winter. You know it, because she sent you a picture the day she got it. This photograph was taken 3 days ago at most. There's no note, no name. You sit on your bunk and hold it and don't move. Your hands are completely still. You've been in this place long enough that fear doesn't come with trembling anymore. It comes with cold clarity, the kind that notices everything and feels nothing yet. The scratch on the corner of the photograph, the angle of morning light. Your mother's car in the driveway at a time when she'd normally be at work. Someone waited for her to come home. You fold the photograph, put it in your boot, and something shifts in you, past calculation, past survival instinct, into something older and quieter and far more dangerous. The photograph required 3 things: someone outside with your mother's address, someone inside to receive it and slide it under your door, and someone who decided right now, in the exact moment of Voss's arrest, was the time to use it. That timing wasn't coincidental. This was a leash. And leashes only get attached by people who believe they already have control. Over the next 3 days, you worked backward from the photograph itself. Contraband entering D block moved through 3 channels: laundry, kitchen, supply deliveries, and the night shift rotation. You'd spent 2 months cataloging all 3 without planning to use the information. Watching was just the only thing that felt like control. The night shift had 4 guards. You'd already mapped 3 of them. The 4th was a guard named Bro. Quiet, 3 years at Whitmore, transfer requests denied twice. The kind of person designed not to be noticed. Through Orellana, a man in C block who moved information between blocks in exchange for Reyes's protection, you sent a single question: who handles packages on Bro's shift? The answer came back in 2 days. Bro doesn't handle packages. He delivers messages. For Voss. So Voss was gone and still running channels into D block. The photograph didn't come from Carlos Reyes. It didn't come from Holloway. It came from Raymond Voss, operating from a federal holding facility, through Bro, through a contact on the outside. You needed to know who that contact was, and whether they were just watching your mother or preparing something worse. You decided to move on Bro first. Your plan was simple: surface him without confronting him. Let the internal review system do the work. Through Orellana, you let a rumor enter the kitchen channel that someone on the night shift had been asking specific questions about the federal investigation's timeline. No names, just enough to trigger a review. But Bro heard it before it reached the warden's office. And that was your first mistake. You didn't know that Voss had prepared for exactly this. 2 days after your rumor entered the kitchen channel, a guard conducted a shakedown of your cell. Routine, they said. But it wasn't routine, because when it was over, a folded piece of paper was sitting on your bunk that hadn't been there before. A list of names, inmates, transaction figures beside each one, your number at the top. Someone had placed it there for the guards to find. By morning, the word moving through the block was that you'd been cooperating with Holloway's investigation, feeding names to the feds, building a case from the inside. Carlos's men stopped acknowledging you in the corridor. Holloway appeared at your cell that evening, and for the first time, he was smiling. "You've got a problem," he said. You said nothing. "The offer's still open," he said. "It's the only one you're going to get." He left. Marcus didn't come that night, or the next morning, and then, through Orellana, whose loyalty to anyone had limits you were about to discover, a second piece of information arrived. A man had been seen twice on your mother's street, driving slowly, parked once for 40 minutes outside the house. Not a photograph this time, a presence. Voss had escalated. You sat in your cell for 2 hours that night and you understood clearly how badly you had miscalculated. You'd moved too fast. Surfaced Bro without first identifying the outside contact, and the moment Bro felt the pressure, Voss had activated the contingency, not just tightening the leash on you but moving someone physically closer to your mother. You had no allies. Marcus had disappeared. Carlos believed you were informing. Holloway wanted exactly what Voss wanted, just for different reasons. And somewhere outside, a man was driving slowly past a house on a street you hadn't seen in over a year. You thought about the watch they'd taken on intake day. Your mother's watch. You thought about the envelope you'd delivered for Voss 3 months ago, the one that had gotten you his trust. Thick in the middle. Sealed tight. And then you remembered something Voss had said that first morning at table 7. Food, phones, protection, privileges. It all flows through me. Phones. Voss's operation didn't just move product and messages, it moved phone access. Controlled, logged, documented, because in a federal facility, even contraband calls leave traces somewhere if you know where to look. Voss had known where to look, which meant somewhere in the record of that operation, there was a thread that connected the inside channels to whoever was on the outside. Bro was the internal channel, but Bro received instructions. He didn't originate them. Someone had to have transmitted the address of your mother's house from outside. That meant a phone call, a letter, or a visit, all of which in a federal facility were documented. You didn't have access to those records, but Marcus did. You needed to find Marcus. He'd been pulled for interrogation, not by federal investigators but by the warden's office, connected to the same internal review that had been triggered by your rumor about the night shift. His proximity to you over the past months made him a person of interest, which meant Voss had anticipated that too. Getting a message to Marcus through normal channels was impossible. Everything was being watched now. Orellana had already shown where his loyalty bent. You had one option. Dwight Callahan. Dwight had been at Whitmore for 19 years. He'd been in solitary 4 times. He wanted nothing from anyone and owed nothing to anyone, which made him the only person in D Block that Voss's network had never successfully incorporated. You'd spent months carefully respecting the perimeter Dwight had built around himself, not ignoring him, actively respecting it, handling small situations that drifted toward him before they reached him. You went to him during rec hour, and you stood near him and you said quietly, "I need someone to carry 1 sentence to Marcus Webb, not a note. 1 sentence." Dwight didn't look at you. "What's the sentence?" he said. "Tell him I need to know who signed for visits in the last 6 months on Voss's approved contact list." Dwight was quiet for a moment. "That's 2 sentences, he said. He walked away. The answer came back the next morning, passed through a chain you never fully traced. because Dwight operated through channels that predated everyone currently in Whitmore and answered to no one. Marcus had taken a risk to get it. Later you'd learn what that risk cost him. The name on Voss's approved visitor log, listed 4 times over the past year, was a man named Curtis Pell. Curtis Pell had been released from a federal facility in Illinois 14 months earlier after serving 6 years on trafficking charges that had originated from the same network that produced your own case. He had a documented address in a city 40 minutes from where your mother lived. He wasn't a hitman. He wasn't muscle. He was the kind of man Voss used for exactly what he'd been doing. Quiet surveillance, low pressure, the implied threat that requires nothing explicit because the person receiving it already understands what it means. But knowing who he was still left you with the core problem. You were inside. He was outside. And as long as Voss believed he had leverage over you, Pell would keep driving past that house. You needed Voss to believe the leverage was gone. There was one person outside these walls you were permitted to contact for legal purposes, your attorney. Monthly calls, documented but legally protected. You called her. You didn't tell her everything. You gave her Curtis Pell's name, his documented address, and the name of the federal task force that had originally investigated the trafficking network he'd been part of. You told her to contact them. Not on your behalf, but because a man with Pell's record was, potentially violating the terms of his supervised release by conducting surveillance. You told her to make the call from her office, formally, on the record. You told her to do it that afternoon. She asked, why the urgency? Because someone is parked on my mother's street, you said, and I need that to stop today. She made the call. Curtis Pell was picked up for a supervised release violation check 2 days later. He wasn't charged with anything serious, but he was back in a federal facility. Within 72 hours, and whatever instructions Voss had given him were no longer executable. Your attorney confirmed it in writing through the legal mail channel. For the first time in 2 weeks, you breathed normally, but you still had the problem inside Whitmore. The planted document, Carlos's suspicion, Bro still walking the night shift, and no confirmation from Marcus about where he stood after whatever the warden's office had put him through. Marcus found you in the yard on a Thursday afternoon. He looked tired in a way that went past physical, the kind of tired that comes from a calculation that cost more than expected. They offered me something, he said. He didn't look at you. During the interrogation, early consideration on my remaining time, in exchange for a formal statement about your involvement with Voss's operation. You waited. I told them I had nothing useful, he said. Was that true? You asked. He looked at you then. Mostly, he said. There were things I saw that I chose not to see clearly. You were quiet for a moment. What did it cost you? You said. The early consideration, he said. I served the full 2 years. He said it without self-pity, just as a fact. And Devereaux? You asked. That part, Marcus said, I did give them, because that part was true and provable and had nothing to do with you. He paused. Devereaux has been passing information about Carlos's operation to Voss's network since he arrived here. Voss was using it as leverage against Carlos, insurance in case Reyes ever became a problem. Did Carlos know? He does now, Marcus said. What Carlos did with that information, you never fully confirmed. What you know is that 2 days later, Devereaux requested protective custody, and the request was granted within hours, which meant someone with influence had made clear, without saying it directly, that D Block was no longer a safe location for him. The planted document was still a problem. But with Devereaux gone and Pell in custody and the logical chain of Voss's internal network exposed to the warden's office through the ongoing review, the document's credibility collapsed on its own. There was no one left to confirm it. And in a federal facility, evidence without a credible source goes nowhere. 3 weeks after it appeared on your bunk, it simply stopped being mentioned. And then Bro put in a transfer request. This time, it was approved. On a Monday morning 6 weeks after the photograph appeared under your door, You walked into the D-Block cafeteria at the regular time. You didn't walk differently. You didn't look around for confirmation of anything. But conversation stopped. Not all at once. In a wave, table by table, the way sound dies in a space when something interrupts it. Silverware slowing. Eyes moving without heads turning. A man near the entrance stepped to the side without being asked. Carlos Reyes was at his table. He watched you cross the room. He didn't nod. He didn't speak. But he didn't look away either. And in that sustained, level gaze was something you recognized. Not friendship, not alliance, acknowledgement. Dwight Callahan was at a corner table. He didn't look up at all. But when you passed him, he said quietly, without raising his head, "Voss thought you were a piece, something to move around the board." He picked up his spoon. "Now they all know you're the board." You sat down. You ate your breakfast. You didn't say anything to anyone. The cost arrived in the weeks that followed, not as punishment, just as the natural consequence of the thing you'd built. There was a radius around you now that nobody crossed without purpose. Men who'd been easy around you in the first months now chose their words carefully. A new inmate tried to make conversation with you at the commissary one afternoon, casual, friendly, and two other men quietly redirected him before he finished his second sentence. You watched it happen from 10 feet away. You understood exactly what it meant. Then you got sick, something that moved through the block fast and hit you harder than anyone else. 4 days, barely functional. During those 4 days, not one person came to your cell, not out of cruelty, out of the same careful distance that now governed everything around you. Nobody was certain what checking on you would cost them. Marcus came on the 3rd day, stood in the doorway, not inside. "You need anything?" he said. "No," you said. He nodded and left. That was the loneliest you'd felt since the bus. The reputation traveled before you did. A man transferred from a facility in Virginia arrived in D-Block 7 months after the Voss situation ended. First day during intake processing through the block, he looked at you and stopped. Not the way new inmates usually looked at you. He said, "You're 7741. He said it the way someone says a name they've heard before, not a number, a name. "Where'd you hear that?" You asked. "Petersburg," he said. "Man named Calhoun. Said there was someone at Whitmore who took down Voss's network from inside a cell. Said Voss himself confirmed it when they transferred him to Arizona. Said Voss told someone, I underestimated him." You looked at him for a moment. "Calhoun talks too much," you said. You walked away. But you filed it. Raymond Voss, in a facility with 4 perimeters and no outside windows, had told someone what happened. That meant he hadn't been destroyed by it. He'd chosen to let the story travel. And you spent a long time understanding what that meant. Whether it was one last move, whether somewhere in the telling, Voss had found a way to make the story serve him, framing himself as the man who'd found you, shaped you, created the conditions that made you possible. Maybe, but the story that was traveling through the federal system wasn't about Voss. It was about 7741. Marcus left on a Thursday morning. He went through processing quietly, picked up his property. You were in the corridor. Technically shouldn't have been, but a guard who understood the block looked the other way. He stopped at the gate, turned around. "The man Devereaux burned," he said. "In Ohio." He paused. "That wasn't just a story I told you." "I know," you said. "I should have told you all of it from the start." "You told me what I needed when I needed it," you said. "That's more than most." Something shifted in his face. He raised one hand, nodded once. The gate opened. Marcus Webb walked out of Whitmore Federal Correctional Institution on a Thursday morning with a paper bag and a bus ticket to Atlanta. You stood in the corridor until the gate closed. In your 7th year, a 19-year-old named Reyes, no relation to Carlos, arrived on D-Block looking exactly the way you'd looked the day you walked that corridor counting steps. You watched him for 3 days. On the 4th day, You fell into step beside him on the way to the cafeteria. First, rule, you said. Don't borrow anything. He looked at you the way you'd looked at Marcus. You kept walking. The sentence reduction came through in year 8. A vacated charge, one of the original counts that a federal judge determined had been procedurally compromised at trial. Combined with documented conduct credits, it compressed 14 years into 8 years and 7 months. Your attorney delivered the news through legal mail on a Wednesday. You went back to your cell and sat on your bunk and looked at the wall for a while. You felt something that took a moment to identify. Not relief, not triumph. The particular weight of a thing that was actually ending. The morning you walk out, it's raining. Just a steady gray drizzle. The kind that makes everything look like it's been scrubbed clean. You have a bag, a prepaid phone, an address, a check for the balance in your Inmate account. The gate opens. You step through. No one is there to meet you. That's the way you wanted it. Just the gate, the drizzle, and a road that goes somewhere you haven't been in 8 years. You stand there for a moment. You breathe. You're 31 years old. You went in at 23 and they called you an animal. What walked out the other side isn't innocent. It isn't clean. It isn't the same person who sat on that bus counting steps and trying not to show his face what he felt. But it's not the monster they were building either. They wanted something they could file. Something they could predict. They wanted a monster. You gave them a mystery. And you kept the one thing they never put in any file. The part that knew the difference. You start walking. The rain gets heavier. You don't stop. There are more worlds like this one. Hidden systems. Rules that nobody writes down. Lives that exist right beneath the surface of the one everyone else sees. If that's where you want to go, subscribe. The next file is already open.